Hey gang, welcome to another episode of Value Added, the real estate podcast. On today's episode, we're chatting with Jeff Allen. Jeff is the founder of Executive Management Services. They are a Boise, Idaho-based property management firm. They focus mainly on multifamily apartment buildings, as well as smaller single family and 2 and 3 family homes as well. So without further ado, let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Value Added, the real estate podcast where we speak with the brightest minds in the world of real estate who provide, create, and realize value in an ever-changing market. And now your host, Nick Walters.
I had Chris Nebenzahl on from Yardy Matrix a few months ago, and he mentioned Boise, Idaho. Oh, I don't know, maybe a couple dozen times. So being from Boise, Idaho, I do feel that Boise is the next Salt Lake City, the next Denver. There's a lot of rumblings out there as Boise being the next tech hub in those mountain states out there. How do you feel about that comment?
100%. I moved up here, 8 years ago, and 8 years ago, even then, there was a lot of growth. They had probably over 5,000 multifamily units that were in planning to build. Single family was booming. Market was growing. Everything was crazy. And then here we are 8 years later, and homes are growing in value, $150,000, and they're just keep going and going. And now we don't have enough units to cover the influx of people moving in. They can't build them fast enough. Part of the concern out here is, a lot of the locals are pissed because they're being pushed out of their hometown because they can't afford the rents, because everyone from Seattle, Frisco, LA, Denver, Dallas, they're migrating into this area, and they're, at least last year, they were dumping 1031 money into buying 2 homes, 3 homes. And, now that hasn't been happening so much this year. Things have halted back a lot because now we're seeing construction costs, taxes, those kind of things going up. So the property investments are starting to decrease a little bit. People are getting into new construction build. Even some semi-industrial seems to be a little bit more advantageous because the cost of building is cheaper, it's faster, and there is a market here who has a demand for it.
Gotcha. So let's go back. Tell the listeners about Executive Management Services and your career leading up to where you are today.
Sure. I originally from Southern California, managed property in Orange County, South County, LA County. I was really a multifamily guy. Operations day-to-day, property manager, regional manager. And my family and I, we migrated up here 8 years ago, like I said, and we were really just looking for that our own private Idaho. We were making good money, but we weren't enjoying it because we were, paying high rent. We were traveling planes, trains, and automobiles to get to work, and the quality of life just wasn't there. So moving up here to Boise was the best thing we ever did for ourselves, and what a perfect time for us to come up here because the market is so hot, and it continues to be. So really, with the experience that I acquired from the SoCal market, made me a hot commodity out here. I did a couple of large lease ups here, new construction, worked with a couple of big companies that needed some expertise in multifamily operation type stuff. And then kind of just developed into my own consulting, partnered with a local developer, entrepreneur, And together we formed Executive Management Services, which was originally supposed to be an in-house management group. Later found that there's a need in the market for a very transparent, honest outfit that doesn't want to make money off of maintenance and markup. We want to make money off of managing your property.
So let's go into that a little bit. What is your point of difference? Is it the focus on the customer rather than to what you just said, the renovation budget, being compensated for the other KPIs, lease up, things like that? What is your point of difference?
My tagline in a lot of my networking is we're property managers with an asset manager mindset. I think everybody can be a property manager, and homeowners, investors. Yeah, you can collect the rent, you can do those things that you need to do. But, the uniqueness of what we do really is, digging into a specific subject property and determining, what the value is, and then carrying a vision moving forward into how do we create more value for this property. There's a lot of different, people have their own different beliefs on what creating value means. And for us, it's really focusing on the basics, focusing on the property, and what that property entails, because every property is not the same. They're all very different. So that's really, I think, what we carry and what we bring forward. And our mindset, again, is we don't get paid until you get paid. So, do we charge a higher, management fee? Yeah, we do. Why? Because we deserve it, because we're not just collecting the rent, because we're not marking you up and we're not making money off of our maintenance. We're really focusing on, creating the value.
So tell me a little bit about your partner's portfolio. So this started as this was going to be an in-house property management firm that you were going to manage your own portfolio. So I would assume that is your core asset class. But tell us a little bit about your partner's portfolio, kind of what type of asset class that is, and how that has woven into your overall portfolio that you manage for your other clients.
Sure. Originally, it was all multifamily. Back in 2018, there was a 200-unit multifamily A-class property, amenities, clubhouse, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom type product. And that's really what we started, doing. And from there, we just wanted to carry, basically when we took over that property during the beginning stages of the lease up, we did take it from another property management company. Just getting the occupancy was a struggle for them. So when I came in consulting and getting things set up, we really focused on raising rents, bringing it up to market. We were a little bit below market. Ancillary income, adding some ancillary income items to create that added value really helped as well. So, with my investment group, when they saw the numbers and where we were going with the cap rates that they were at that time, their mind was blown because they didn't realize, that billing back utilities is important, or, charging a pet fee, is important. If you can get some bulk TV and internet ideas in there, mind blowing. It really creates huge value. So that's really where we started off. And from there, the guys that I work for were like, man, we can do this, 1,000 units deep. We started building, we started getting into contract on land and, looking at great locations nearby on opportunity zones and things like that. And then, a big wah, we got COVID hit, and that stopped everything. So for us, it was a very detrimental part of our company because we couldn't rely on that new construction concept, especially in multifamily, because the uncertainty factor and construction costs were skyrocketing. So the numbers just weren't penciling. So we did our own little pivot and started tapping into single family. So I started really focusing on, the local real estate and putting myself out there to tap into single family property management, which is a lot different than multifamily property management. Same concepts, just different tactics and day-to-day things. And then,
so let me cut you off. Let me cut you off for a second. I want to talk about the single family property management that is really in the same world as smaller, 2 family, 3 family, 4 family. But I want to go back to the RUBS programs, the utility bill back programs that, you said it, like a lot of landlords are not utilizing this program. So first of all, explain what RUBS is and how you've implemented it into your portfolio of properties that you're managing, and why every landlord needs to consider this strategy with regards to controlling the monthly income.
Sure. When I moved up here 8 years ago, it drove me nuts because some of these properties that I was overseeing or managing, everybody was 100% occupied. Everybody was, the market rents were flatlined, and it just blew me away because I came from the mindset of, if you're 100%, you're doing something wrong. You got to anticipate some vacancy and make sure your budget, is written accordingly, because you want to grow your rents. And, out here in the Boise area, at least 8 years ago, they hadn't caught on to that yet. So with that said, every owner that I talk to, I educate them on RUBS. RUBS is a utility bill back process, basically, that says, hey, you're paying for water, trash, and sewer fees, and here's what you're paying per building or per unit. And, based on that, you can bill back those exact dollars and cents to the tenant. Or you can do a flat rate if you want to recoup some of that cost, so that you're not solely 100% paying for those utilities on your own. And what you find is that tenants don't have a problem paying those utilities because they pay them everywhere else. You move into you rent a home, you're going to, start up your own utility. So it just doesn't make sense for an owner to be responsible for that. It's money out of your pocket. So whatever cash flow you think you're getting off of raising your rents, you're offsetting a loss because you're paying for your own utilities. So that could be a huge detriment to your overall value of that one property. And it could be it could determine, you making money when you decide to sell.
Yeah, it's becoming a lot more apparent in this market where, cap rates are compressed. Investors are looking for any way to mitigate their monthly expenses, and a RUBS program is a very, very good way to mitigate your monthly expenses. And especially, to your point, you're passing on expenses that tenants would pay otherwise in other properties, whether it be a single family home or even in other apartment buildings. So I think it's a strategy that really should be implemented by every landlord, but that's not always the case, right?
Yeah, Nick, what I've found in this whole process is, and it goes back to old school stuff, it's lack of education. You have property owners who, own a home or a fourplex, and that's their income. They are retired. They're on a fixed income. This little baby that they have, that's their sole income, and they just want 100% occupancy. That's what they want. They don't want to add any more increases. They don't want to deal with this RUB concept. And when you sit down and you're able to kind of talk it through and go, Okay, well, here's what your competitors are doing. Here's what your neighbors are doing. Here's what, the market is doing, and here's what they're getting. It usually is a no-brainer for them. And then at that point, it's just finding a strategy to implement those things and move forward. And that might mean you don't raise rents this year. You develop your rub, build that in this year, get that going, and then next year you focus on raising your rents. So it doesn't have to all clash at one time. It's a strategic process, but it needs to be done.
I want to talk about the multifamily market and the impact that COVID has had on the market, especially the last few months, where we're definitely seeing and hearing a lot more distress in the market with regards to collections. But I want to talk about your experience with managing smaller properties, single family homes. I'm sure you have some smaller residential, technically residential 2, 3, 4 family homes in your portfolio. I have found, and I'm sure any investor that has invested in smaller properties, the smaller the property, the more difficult it is to find a competent property manager that is going to manage the properties that you expect them to be managed. Why is it so difficult for investors to find managers of smaller properties, and how do you come in and solve that problem?
Yes. I think certain markets do struggle in this area. In my market, not necessarily so much, but I do see in some of the bigger, metropolitan markets, it is so difficult. I think primarily because property management companies that have grown into being a powerhouse are so driven on income. And when you look at renting a small unit, you're just not going to make money. And that's why I think companies like mine are so important in every market, because we're not trying to be Greystar. We're not trying to be these large, alliance. We are a local home-based outfit that really focuses on, that old school mentality of, when you knock on the door, we're going to answer it. We're going to step up and answer the door. So just that philosophy alone, you're going to get better service. And I just think that in certain markets that is lacking, because they, who wants to take on 1, 2, or 3 doors? They're looking at 10, 20, 30 units. And even some of the single family property management groups don't even want to take on 1 door. So yeah, I can see that being an issue. Out here, it's so competitive because everybody knows the market's so hot that, that we're, you have real estate agents who are trying to manage property, which is crazy to me because, at the end of the day, yes, everybody can manage a property. I get that. It's not rocket science, but somebody with my experience or other people who have great experience, there's different little things that we know that we do that help, and time. Even the time alone, is it worth $120 a month, $150 a month, just to have somebody else answer the phone and deal with the after hours stuff? Like, yes, it should be. It's affordable. And I don't think people realize that either.
So let's dig into the multifamily market. I had a bunch of multifamily investors on this last summer when we were in the throes of the COVID lockdown. Because of the additional stimulus that the government was sending out to a lot of these investors' tenants, rent collections were very, very stable throughout the summer. Over the last couple months, we have seen and heard some more distress in the market, with collections being a lot lower than what we experienced 6 months prior. With regards to your portfolio, how is your portfolio performing now versus when a lot of your tenants probably were getting the additional $600 a week stimulus?
Yeah, we're kind of following that same trend out here that you referred to in multifamily. What's interesting is single family, no problem. Rent's collected, everything's great. And, I find that interesting because, why should there be a difference, But the reality is in multifamily, what we've experienced, early on, there were no issues with delinquency collection. We were a little bit more proactive in our approaches and kind of creating our own little stimulus ideas and, waiving some fees and working with people on promise to pays and stuff like that, which has really helped us. We have not had one eviction we had, I think, 2 skips in our multifamily portfolio, which isn't a bad track record considering what our nation is going through. But in current state, we do carry a higher delinquency. What's great is some of our local agencies who are getting funds from the government are working with us on getting some of these past due rents paid. That's taken a lot more effort on my property managers because some tenants just don't know how to fill out paperwork right, or they need to be pushed to do it because they think that it's not going to work. They're already set up in this negative connotation that it's not going to work for me, so why should I try? And we've really encouraged people and motivated them, and as a result, our owners are getting, the rents that are past due, they're getting paid, so it's kind of a good thing. But yes, you're right. I do currently see some struggles with our multifamily portfolio and in the rent collection process, and really, it's just a matter of thinking outside of the box, being a little bit more creative with those collections, working with people, understanding people and their situations. I mean, we had some people who caught Corona, they had to be quarantined, so they're missing 3 weeks of pay. Some have lost jobs and furloughed and had to get another job, so they're trying to get back on their feet. And that's all understandable circumstances during this time. So, I've encouraged owners to work with those tenants, because the last thing you want to do is jeopardize, vacancy loss, turnover cost, re-renting a unit, all that cost, and it adds up. And why not just work with somebody who is willing to pay and they're showing an effort to, move forward.
What sort of creative ways have you managed monthly rental income as well as retention, keeping your tenants, in a home that they love being in, but maybe they're looking for other options because they can't afford what they are paying now? What sort of creative ways are you working with your tenants all together in maximizing the rental income every month?
What's really sad to say here is that, in my opinion, in property management, we should be doing these things pre-COVID. It boils down to the humanitarian in me, I think, because, for so long, property managers were in this place where, people don't pay their rent on time, you 3-day them, and then you process this paperwork into the attorney, and then the system goes, and then they're evicted. And that's just, day-to-day standard SOP. And we have forgotten the human side, the emotion side of this business. And why are we not working with people who can't pay their rent? What is the reason for it? Yeah, you have some, very few, who take advantage of the situation, who don't pay when they say that they are, and they try to, hide away and get away with not paying. And those people do need to be dealt with accordingly. But then you have people who have had hardships. What's wrong with them paying half of their rent the first of the month and half of their rent in the later part of the month? Those kind of things, why can't you waive a late fee? A late fee is extra income for an owner. And I get that you have a budget that you have to meet. Owners have to pay a mortgage and insurance and all of these things. I understand that. But if you have the ability to work with people, get creative, like waiving certain fees temporarily, then you are retaining a good tenant. You're not dealing, like I said, with that turnover issue because turnover costs can get expensive depending on the age of your property or what kind of damage there is. You also have vacancy loss. I mean, our market is so hot. If we lost somebody, we can probably re-rent it the next day. But then we're also raising rents and it's competitive. And we have, 18 new properties nearby that anybody can go to. So who's to say that they wouldn't, that they would come to us? It's scary to think I can re-rent this tomorrow when maybe you can't. So why that, to me, that's more of a risk than keeping somebody who can't pay the rent initially because of a job loss situation. We, as a company, created this forbearance concept where we told our residents, hey, it's going to get a little bit tricky here in the summer months. We want to help. And how are we going to help? Here's what we propose. We propose that you hold on to your money. You don't pay your rent for March and April, 2 months of rent, put food on the table, pay the electric bill. And what we'll do is we will anticipate collecting rent in June. And when your lease term is over, we will put you on a renewal plan so that we can recoup some of that expense through the course of another 12 or 15 month lease renewal. It will increase their rent a couple, $120 a month. But what does that do for a family who lost jobs now? And then to me, now is the time where, we're waiting for, the government to get stimulus in place and those things look like they're going to happen. But we as, citizens don't really know. So what are the things that our owners and I can do now to help think creatively to help people now so that we're trying to retain them, because most people will find jobs.
That is such a great creative way of not only collecting the rent, but also keeping a good tenant in the unit for the foreseeable future. Being able to amortize those short-term losses into a new lease, that additional $150 a month, that stings a lot less, right, to the tenant, rather than putting them on the hook for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 all at once. I think it's a very smart way to keep your tenants happy and keep them in their home. And give me some last parting words about your firm or property management in general that we may have not touched on.
I think what makes property management companies successful, it goes back to, we're not in the business to be rich. It's not a glamorous career. We're in the business. We should be in the business to help people, whether that be your tenants or your owners or investors. And I think when you carry forward that mentality in this industry, you surround yourself with a collective group of wonderful people who care. And as a result, you're able to propose a stimulus forbearance kind of situation like I have. So, this isn't something that I can solely take credit for. My investors who believe in me and what we're doing and want to help people have agreed to this, and they are taking some loss in doing so. But, again, we as society need to be helping one another as best as we can, because we're all in the same boat, and we want that boat to move forward and get through this so that those choppy waters start to kind of flatten out into smooth waters. And it will. We all know that it will. It's just getting through the time. So, I think people just need to be a little bit more patient. Property management companies are working harder. It's not easy out there right now. We have people at home all the time. We have, the numbers speak volume. You have more complaints, more issues, more maintenance requests, more creative thinking, more concern with your own personal safety because you have COVID out there who's migrating into different forms that are affecting people in different ways. So it is a struggle, and I understand that, but we need to be a little bit more careful with how we deal with people and try to get them to remain as much as we can in reason.
We're going to close out this episode, Jeff, with the hard-hitting questions. These are the questions that we ask every one of our guests. The first thing I always like to ask is, what is your why?
What is my why? I couldn't figure out why I wanted to do what I wanted to do for a number of years, but the reality is I know that I just wanted to help people and feel good about what I'm doing. So there's my why.
Is there a recent book or another piece of media that you've consumed that has provided significant value to your life or your career?
There's so many things out there that have truly impacted my mindset. There's a lot of people out there. There's one book though, The Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I know that's such an old book. But I found myself in trying to grow this company. There was a struggle with me during the COVID time because what was once a 900 unit potential growth opportunity for me turned out to be 0. So I had to really kind of reset and think about, things change all the time. If you're a company that doesn't change, then there's problems, right? So we're forever forward changing with the way that we do things. And for some reason, that Rich Dad, Poor Dad kind of got me in this mindset of, it's mostly kind of a money driven kind of concept, but it's so important to, how you think about the value of a dollar.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Jeff, looking back, knowing what you know now, and looking back to your 21, 22-year-old postgraduate self, what would be that number one piece of advice that you would give him?
Oh my goodness. I think in my younger years, I was very carefree, as most 20-year-olds usually are. There's very few that I know that are not this way. But I didn't really have a sense of direction. I was brought up with the philosophy of, you don't have to go to college to be successful. And I'm kind of on the fence with that, right? Because I see so many people who've benefited from education, and then I've seen so many people who didn't need it. They didn't even need high school, and they're millionaires. So, for me, I think what I would tell my young self would be, Jeff, you really need to focus on what direction you're going and be an expert in that direction you're wanting to take, because I was just all over the place. I mean, I wanted to be a cop, a flight attendant, detective. Then I wanted to be, an entrepreneur. I mean, I just was all over the place.
Well, education is so important, whether it's in the classroom or on the street. That's the most important thing out there. And Jeff, we really appreciate the time today, and really grateful for you to come on and providing your value today.
Nick, I appreciate it, man. I love talking and having great conversations, and you're a great host, man. So thank you for your time.
I appreciate that. I do want to ask you one more question. How can our listeners get a hold of you or learn a little bit more about the Boise real estate market and executive management services?
Yes, we have a website. It's called executivemanagementidaho.com. We're strictly here in the Boise market, Treasure Valley area. We have a great website. It's got a lot of outside of the box ideas. Like I've come up with a renter's guide for people. We have a rent to own program that we've implemented. So there's a lot of good content there. We have, just kind of an about us kind of page where you can learn. There's an inquiry page. You can send me an inquiry on, if you have a question about property management, you're a property manager, you're an investor, you want to learn a little bit more about the industry or the market, I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody there. So the website is good. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all that stuff. So yeah, we're pretty reachable.
Jeff Allen, thank you for adding your value today. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave a rating and a review, which will help us introduce the podcast to other listeners. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which will give you access to other episodes you may have missed. Lastly, if you'd like to learn more about investing alongside us, then head on over to valueaddedpodcast.com. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week.